The Great War had ended. A silence fell across Europe, but it was not a silence of peace. For Germany, it was the silence of utter defeat. The nation was exhausted, its armies were broken, its people were in shock. The proud German Empire had crumbled into dust. The Treaty of Versailles was a bitter pill. It stripped Germany of territory, it crippled its military, it imposed colossal reparation payments. This treaty was seen as a deep humiliation. The economic consequences were devastating. Germany struggled to pay, the government printed more money, hyperinflation gripped the land, money became worthless, a wheelbarrow full of banknotes might buy a loaf of bread, life savings vanished overnight, businesses collapsed, unemployment soared, hope dwindled, people starved in the streets of once prosperous cities, the fabric of society began to tear. This was a nation on its knees. Despair settled over the German people. They had lost a war, they had lost their savings, they had lost their pride. Many felt a profound sense of betrayal. They searched for someone to blame. Scapegoats were sought for the nation's suffering. The seeds of a terrible future were being sown. The Weimar Republic was born from defeat. It carried this burden from its first breath. Many Germans never truly accepted it. They saw it as a symbol of national shame. The government faced constant attacks. From the far left, communists dreamed of revolution. From the far right, nationalists yearned for the old order. They despised democracy. They longed for an authoritarian hand. The political landscape was a battlefield. Trust in democratic institutions eroded daily. Violence became a grim feature of Weimar life. Paramilitary groups clashed in the streets. Political figures were murdered. Fear stalked the corridors of power. The Republic fought for survival. It was a democracy under siege. Its defenders were brave, but they were often outnumbered. The forces of extremism were relentless. They chipped away at the foundations of freedom. The German people watched, uncertain and anxious. Their future seemed to hang by a thread. The Great Depression struck Germany with brutal force. American loans, which had propped up the economy, dried up. Factories closed their gates. Millions lost their jobs. Poverty became widespread once more. Extremist parties promising radical solutions gained terrifying momentum. In this climate of despair, a small political group began to stir. It was called the German Workers' Party. It met in humble beer halls in Munich. In 1919, an unknown ex-soldier joined its ranks. His name was Adolf Hitler. He was a powerful, mesmerizing speaker. He possessed a burning sense of grievance. He quickly rose through the party's ranks. He reshaped its message. He gave it a new, potent direction. This was the genesis of a monstrous force. The party soon changed its name. It became the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, or more simply, the Nazi Party. It adopted a striking symbol, the swastika. This ancient symbol was twisted into an emblem of hate. Hitler's influence grew stronger every day. He was a master of propaganda. He understood the power of symbols and rallies. He knew how to manipulate emotions. The party's ideology was a toxic brew. It combined nationalism, racism, and anti-communism. Propaganda was the Nazi Party's lifeblood. Hitler delivered fiery speeches. He promised to restore Germany's greatness. He vowed to tear up the Treaty of Versailles. He offered simple answers to complex problems. Many, desperate for hope, began to listen. Adolf Hitler was released from prison after less than a year. He had learned a crucial lesson. Power would not be won through force alone. Not yet. He set about rebuilding the Nazi Party. He focused on gaining power through legal means. He aimed to exploit the weaknesses of the Weimar democracy. He would use the system to destroy the system. The party began to organize meticulously. It built a nationwide network. It prepared for elections. The economic misery of the late 1920s and early 1930s played directly into Hitler's hands. As unemployment soared, so did Nazi support. Hitler's charismatic speeches offered a potent drug. He promised salvation to a desperate nation. He spoke of a glorious future. He exuded an aura of absolute certainty. Many saw him as a strong leader. They believed he could pull Germany from the abyss. His appeal was dangerous. It was hypnotic. It was growing stronger by the day. The Nazi Party had its own paramilitary wing. They were the SA, the Sturmabteilung, the brown shirts. They were thugs and bullies. They created an atmosphere of violence and fear. Once in power, Hitler moved with ruthless speed. He consolidated his grip on Germany. The Reichstag building went up in flames. The Nazis blamed the communists. They used the fire as a pretext. An emergency decree suspended civil liberties. Freedom of speech, assembly, and the press vanished. Then came the Enabling Act. This law gave Hitler dictatorial powers. Parliament became irrelevant. The Third Reich had begun. The Nazis called their revolution Gleichschaltung. All aspects of German life were brought under Nazi control. Youth groups were indoctrinated with Nazi ideology. The Hitler Youth became compulsory. Culture was purged of un-German influences. Radio and newspapers became tools of propaganda. Fear and conformity spread like a virus. Society was remade in the Nazi image. Hitler then turned his attention to foreign policy. He had always planned to overturn the Treaty of Versailles. He began to rearm Germany in secret, then openly. He built up the army, navy, and air force. In 1936, German troops marched into the Rhineland. This was a demilitarized zone. It was a direct challenge to the treaty. The persecution of Jewish people began as soon as the Nazis took power. It was a core tenet of their ideology. In 1935, the Nuremberg Laws were enacted. These laws stripped Jews of their German citizenship. They were forbidden from marrying non-Jews. They were systematically excluded from public life. Their businesses were boycotted and confiscated. They became outcasts in their own land. Their rights were eroded. Their dignity was assaulted. This was just the beginning of the horror. On November 9th and 10th, 1938, a wave of orchestrated violence swept across Germany. It was called Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Synagogues were burned to the ground. Jewish homes and businesses were looted and destroyed. Thousands of Jewish men were arrested. They were sent to concentration camps. The world watched in shock, but the international response was muted. The violence was a clear signal. The Nazis were escalating their campaign of hate. The noose was tightening. As Nazi Germany conquered vast territories in Eastern Europe, millions more Jews came under their control. The Nazis established ghettos in cities like Warsaw and Lodz. Jews were forced into these overcrowded, sealed-off areas. They endured starvation, disease, and brutal treatment. On September 1, 1939, German forces invaded Poland. This act ignited the Second World War. The German military unleashed a new form of warfare, blitzkrieg, lightning war. Tanks, dive bombers, and infantry moved with devastating speed. Poland was overrun in weeks. France and Britain declared war on Germany. But they were too late to save Poland. The Nazi war machine seemed invincible. Its shadow stretched across the continent. In 1940, the Wehrmacht turned west. Denmark and Norway fell quickly. Then the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. The main assault struck France. Allied forces were outmaneuvered and overwhelmed. British and French troops were trapped at Dunkirk. A massive evacuation saved many, but France collapsed. Paris was occupied. Britain now stood alone against Hitler. The future of Europe hung precariously in the balance. The world watched with bated breath. Hitler planned to invade Britain, Operation Sea Lion. But first, he needed air supremacy. The Battle of Britain began. The German Luftwaffe launched massive air raids. They targeted airfields, factories, and cities. The Royal Air Force fought bravely. Fighter pilots, outnumbered, defended their skies. Prime Minister Winston Churchill inspired his nation with defiant speeches. "We shall never surrender." The sheer scale of the Eastern Front began to tell. The Battle of Stalingrad became a symbol of this horrific struggle. From August 1942 to February 1943, German and Soviet forces fought relentlessly for the city. The fighting was street by street, house by house. It was a meat grinder. The German Sixth Army was encircled. Hitler forbade retreat. They were trapped. They froze and starved. Eventually they surrendered. It was a catastrophic defeat for Germany. The myth of Nazi invincibility was shattered. The tide had begun to turn. Meanwhile in North Africa, another crucial battle raged. The British Eighth Army under General Montgomery faced Rommel's Afrika Korps. At El Alamein in late 1942, the Allies achieved a decisive victory. Axis forces were pushed back across Libya and Tunisia. American forces landed in Morocco and Algeria. Operation Torch. Caught in a pincer movement, the German and Italian armies in North Africa were defeated. The Mediterranean was secured for the Allies. This victory opened the way for an invasion of Italy, the soft underbelly of Europe. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched the largest amphibious invasion in history. D-Day, Operation Overlord. Thousands of ships carried American, British, Canadian, and other Allied troops. They landed on the beaches of Normandy, in northern France. They faced fierce German resistance, but they established a beachhead. More troops and supplies poured in. Lay in ruins, tens of millions were dead.